using festivals as a tool for rural mission. I'm James Valentine. I'm in the Learning Network based in Darlington, and I'm just going to kick us off today. And just in terms of the outline of today, we have two panel sessions and two breakout room sessions following those. And we've got a range of people who've been involved in festivals in different ways, in different contexts, to hear from their stories, and also opportunities to ask questions from them, and for there to be discussions about some of those stories in our breakout rooms. So that's the broad outline of the session. There's a couple of things in terms of how we work together that are important. We will make the presumption that you've all been on Zoom before, and that is something you're very familiar with. As you already now know, the session is being recorded, and so do make sure you keep yourself safe in terms of that, as Carl has mentioned. There will be opportunity for both chat and conversation and questions, so do use the emotions button on there, or raise your hand, so that you can be seen. There's about 4 or 5 of us on the team, so we should be able to see whether people raise their hand to ask questions. We will politely ask that if you can be on mute as the panel are talking, so that there's not too much background noise. You may have a very lovely dog, but that very lovely dog can sometimes be quite noisy in the background. And so just to have that bear that in mind. And also in the breakout rooms, which there'll be at least a couple of this afternoon, please just make sure that everybody has a go at having given their feedback, sharing their stories, asking their questions, and that's a space for each of you in those small groups to disclose appropriately, to share your stories, and to listen and to respect each other's perspectives on the subject matter this afternoon. In terms of some of the tech things, we're as a team, I think you've all got some of our email addresses, certainly from Catherine. If any of you have any problems with any of the tech and you drop out for any reason, then do feel free just to come back or to message Catherine on email just to let us know if there's any problems at your end. If you need, as Carla has said, if you need to just be off the screen for any reason, then do keep yourself safe in that regard to protect yourself. Is that okay for everybody in terms of ways of working? Let's just do a quick thumbs up. Is that okay with everybody? I can't see everybody because somebody spotlighted me, and it's really awkward when I can see myself on a big screen and I can't see everybody else. So I'll assume that's okay, and I'm going to just pass over to Lorraine, who is going to do our devotions.
Hi everybody, I'm Lorraine Brown. I'm a Methodist deacon, and I am stationed as a Peak Park Rural Development Enabler, and part of this webinar, the Positively Rural webinar. So we're just going to start with a meditation that ends with a prayer. It's about sheep, because at this time of year, I and probably some of you have either been heavily involved or are still involved with lambing. And it starts about talking about sheep and how we might be like those sheep, and ends up telling us to get out there and do some talking. And that seems appropriate for today. In peace, we will begin. We are the sheep, flocking together, feeling safe together, following each other, sometimes silly, sometimes confused, always hungry, not meat eaters, we're gentle creatures, keeping our heads down. If we can, we feed in green pastures, sometimes wandering onto stony ground, scattering on dark and cloudy days, getting lost, grateful to be found. With our soft wool, we're very huggable, and with our soft heads, we're very muggable. Simple, sociable, needing a leader, hoping to be looked after, we are the sheep. Then there is the wolf. Mothers warn their children about it, even Rottweilers may tremble. It is lean and mean and greedy, sometimes wears sheep's clothing and sneaks into the flock. It is never far away, and what it likes best is to creep up and snatch the sheep. Or the hired man, what about him? He's not a real shepherd. He's just doing a job. They are his living. Who said he should die for them? He does not own the sheep or know their names. They do not know his voice, and their constant bleating annoys him. He cannot be expected to meet all their needs. Sheep are so stupid. He does not give a toss. He blames his boss. Why should he care for the flock? When the wolf walks in, he will save his own skin. What about that thief? This is the thief, a real villain, a mugger, a vandal. All he wants to do is to steal and spoil and smash things up. And if he's pushed to it, he might even kill. He doesn't use the door. He comes over the wall. He is no kind of hero, not just wicked, not just bad. He's what we hate and cannot escape. He's what's gone wrong in our lives. He's the devil in all of us. But the door, this is the door. Whoever comes in this way will be safe. Their life will be whole. They will be free to come and go. They will be fed. They will be at home with God. And so we pray to the shepherd. Jesus, you are our shepherd. You care for us and show us what caring really means. You know each of us by name. We are beginning to recognize your voice, speaking to us in our restless, noisy, anxious lives. You give up your life for us. You did not run away. No one took it. You gave it. You show us how to live in God's way, in God's love. You are the door to the fold, to a community which is not just a place of refuge, but a place where we are loved and find courage to go out beyond and into the streets. You care for others outside of our church. You reach out to them. You call them by name. Help us to do the same. Help us not to be afraid, not to be sheepish about our faith, but to follow you in God's name, in God's way, in God's love. Amen. Thank you. So we will move quite swiftly then on to our first panel. So our panelists are here. We have 4 panelists. We've got Alison. I don't know whether I can't see you all. Perhaps you can give a wave when we say your name. We have Alison. We have Andrew. We have Carollyn. And we have Katie. So thank you all of you for coming today to be our panelists. I'm not going to introduce you, but I'm going to invite you to introduce yourselves, and you've got a time limit of 1 to 2 minutes. So I'll say your name and you tell us a little bit about yourself. Today we're discussing rural festivals and what that means. Maybe you want to throw something of that in onto the conversation too. Right, so let's start with Alison.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorraine, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alison Fletcher. I live in the Peak District near Bakewell, and I'm a lay chaplain, a lay agricultural chaplain. So part of what we call the Derbyshire Rural Chaplaincy. We're a small team. I'm a lay chaplain working alongside 2 ordained chaplains, and we're covering the county of Derbyshire, which for those of you that may know is a very long, thin county. Derby's at the south, and we go right to the hills towards Glossop and Chapel-on-the-Frith. So agriculturally, it's throughout most of the county, that's for sure. And what we do, essentially, it breaks into 2 or 3 different parts. So in a nutshell, we would say that we are reactive. So we would react to calls as we support the agricultural community. We're very proactive. So that looks like Monday, it's agricultural livestock market at Bakewell, and 1 or more of us is there every Monday. And for those of you in rural areas, you'll know that livestock markets are still the hub of what goes on in many areas. And Bakewell's the only remaining livestock market in the county. So it's quite a thriving place to be on a Monday, and also later in the week, but Monday particularly. We would also say we spend most of the week on farm visits. That's either good news stories or sad stories or somewhere in between stories. But we would proactively visit a number of farms each week and get involved with different groups. And then we're interactive. So one of us milks regularly on a Friday morning. He does supply milking. Another's very good at DIY and maintenance and helps out. And I'm from a farming background of only 10, 11 years, but lambing is the thing I try and help with. So that was great to hear from the poem, Lorraine, and the reflection. And I'll be in a lambing shed by tea time today, all being well. When it talks about rural festivals, for us, it won't surprise any of you to know that actually it's agricultural shows that we attend. And so wherever you are in the country, I'm guessing agricultural shows still exist. As we know, they go from really tiny little village shows right the way through to much, much larger shows. And here in the county, there are a number of shows. And later on, I think we'll explore it a bit more, but it's the agricultural shows that we attend. And I can say a bit more later on, but we find them really refreshing. They're great for us. And hopefully we can have a ministry there as well. So hopefully, Lorraine, that covers enough.
That's wonderful. Spot on 2 minutes. Well done. Thank you very much. Carollyn, would you like to introduce yourself next, please?
Hi, my name's Carollyn McDonald, and I ministered and served in Derbyshire up until 2 years ago. And I served in 5 tiny rural parishes, which was absolutely wonderful. And before that, I was actually in the civic town of Ashbourne. I retired up to Northumberland, which is another big, long rural parish, diocese. So I really enjoyed my time there. One of the things that festivals, when I think of festivals, I think of 2 separate things. One is the church festivals, and one is the festivals that villages have on their own. And one of those you may have heard of, the Tissington well dressings, and that's starts on Ascension Day. So that's very much a church festival that the villagers join in with when they dress the wells with beautiful clay slabs filled with natural colours and shapes to make pictures. And the pictures have traditionally been those of scripture. But the festivals which I also loved were the ones which were happening in the village anyway, things like open gardens. And how can the church, how can we do mission? How can we really contact people and all the people who visit from outside our communities during both of those sorts of sessions? And that's what I've been passionate about all my rural ministry life. And I'm hoping to share more details with you. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much. That's lovely. Andrew, we'll go to you next.
Hi, I'm Andrew Webb. I'm a Methodist minister in the North Yorkshire market town of Skipton, and I'm also rural lead for the Yorkshire West Methodist District. Over the past, during my ministry, I've served in various rural areas in the north of Scotland, in Cumbria, Lancashire, now in Yorkshire. And that's been a privilege and has helped me to develop a real heart for rural folk and for those whose livelihoods and homes are based in rural communities, some of which are beautiful and joyful and some of which bring challenges and concerns. And my particular link with festivals has been at the Great Yorkshire Show. Being Yorkshire, it is of course called Great, and I'm on the Church on Show committee and ecumenical committee, and have been involved in that group for a little while, a few years. It's one of the busiest and the biggest agricultural shows in the country. Last year, over the 4 days, there were 140,000 people visited. So that's a great mission opportunity. And I'll say a little bit more about it later on.
Thank you very much. Katie.
Hello, sorry.
That's all
Just
right.
to say, I'm coming to you from my car because my previous appointment overran, so I wasn't able to get home. So this is an interesting experience. So I'm Katie, I work for the Learning Network, Methodist Church's Learning Network, and I've lived much of my life in South Hampshire in context neighbouring rural communities. In the work I've done for the Learning Network, we've traversed the south of England and the Channel Islands, so worked in many rural communities supporting Methodist mission and coastal rural communities. Personally, music and the creative arts is where I sort of experienced deep encounter with God, and I found myself at many rural arts and music festivals over the years, and have found ways to volunteer at most of them, and often in the God-centered stuff. And I've been fortunate enough to do that with my work, to seek those opportunities in the Learning Network to support Methodist mission at festivals, and particularly rural festivals in our context. So I've supported some Methodist mission at Wickham Music Festival. I was a steward at Glastonbury Festival for many years, but that wasn't exactly Christian mission there. That was fire stewarding, but that's all been good experience feeding into the contemporary. And I've helped set up and run a recurring Methodist mission in a tattoo festival that bordered the rural context. That was an interesting mix, which I think we'll talk about later. So I've been part of an inception, design, delivery and review of mission in rural festivals. And for me, the great reward is that experience of conversation and community that these festival opportunities can create, both in the team, in the festival itself, and in all the fun that can follow that. That's me.
Thank you, Katie. I hope everyone can see what a wealth of experience we've got here. It's wonderful to know that you could discuss from the smallest to the largest, if you like, and to hear about how a mission can be possible at these festival occasions. So I'm going to ask some questions to the panelists. I'm going to ask Carollyn and Andrew this one. I'm going to say, you have been present at rural festivals. Do you think that an intentional Christian presence is valuable at rural festivals? And if so, why? Who wants to go first?
I'll go. That's okay. I'll go. I think it's really valuable, and one is valued by the community for showing up, whether it's a church festival or whether it's a community festival, and you have this chance to have conversations with people who aren't necessarily attending at church, and yet they have faith, and they're the people who sneak into church when it's open and there's nobody there. So it's really important to be with them and to celebrate. That's what we want to do together, is celebrate.
Thank you very much. Andrew.
Yeah, Catherine, I think there was a slide to go up. Is that okay? Catherine's our amazing administrator. Well, I'll talk and there's some pictures might appear. Well, there we go. You see, you're super efficient. So I just want to share a little bit about my experience of being at the Yorkshire Show. We're very fortunate, the group that organises this, which is called the Church on Show Committee, have a permanent presence there. So we have a pavilion. It's a bit like a sports pavilion on the main walkway of the show. So during the course of the 4 days of the show, there are tens of thousands of people that walk past, and it's a fantastic opportunity. Last year, some of the time we were there was beautiful sunshine. Some of the time was very heavy rain. The pavilion became a refuge for some folk, but it's a great thing to be there. One of the things I wanted just to reflect on a bit, which Carollyn's also mentioned, is about conversation, because I think that's the most important thing about our mission presence at any of these events. I was outside of the front for most of the time. Some of the conversations are fairly superficial, passing the time of day, how are you, that sort of thing. Some are on a deeper level. I absorbed some hurt from some folk who'd been upset by things that had happened in the name of the church, and they just wanted to share that, and I needed to listen to that. But I also had conversations with people exploring faith and what faith means to them, or what faith might mean to them. So a whole range of different conversations. There's the book that some of you might have come across. It's quite an old book, and it's by Lawrence Singlehurst, and it's called Sowing, Keeping, Reaping. It's about evangelism. It's quite an old book now, but I really valued that book. And one of the things he says in it is that the first step to good evangelism is letting people know that God is good and Christians are okay. And I think our mission, our presence at festivals, is about letting people know actually Christians are okay, and maybe we can introduce you to a God who is good. So for me, all those people that I encountered that day and all the other volunteers on the stand, we had a chance to let them know Christians are okay and God is good.
Thank you very, very much. So it's quite interesting pulling that together, that whether it's a little festival or a big one, you've sometimes got the same intention, if you like. The conversation and the being present is all important. Thank you. So we're going to move on to a second question. And this is going to be to Katie and Alison now. So have you had any special training before you began attending festivals or ministry and mission at festivals? And if not, what skills would you say were needed? So Katie and Alison. Should we go with Alison first?
That's fine, I'm happy with that. Okay. Well, the answer is no special training, but I think life's training comes to each one of us, so we bring the whole wealth of things. So I would have to say that as long as the last few decades haven't been wasted in my life, I probably brought some life skills training to it. Andrew's touched on some things already that are definitely worth reiterating. I think it's this whole thing about emotional intelligence sometimes. You know, all of us have been to stands and fairs where you don't quite want to be jumped on. In fact, you really don't want anyone to grab you, but you want someone to take an interest. And I think it's really how you pitch things, which is really important. So we don't have a pavilion, but we're got quite a nice new gazebo. So we're quite proud of that, actually. But either way, you are there fronting something with a banner behind you. And I think for me, the skills are being approachable, but knowing how to sort of pitch things, being welcoming. A bit more we can talk about how we plan for that afterwards, but I think it's being welcoming, being approachable. Andrew's touched on listening. It is quite remarkable what you are told when you are there at these events for each one of us. So it's very hard, Lorraine, to put in exact words, but I think we all know, we know what it is to be welcomed, but we know what it is to have someone being overbearing, which we don't want to be. So it's just somehow pitching it, but I haven't been trained, no.
We'll come back to that. That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Katie.
So I had some formal training. I've been trained as a Glastonbury festival steward and as a fire steward, and that saw me in really good stead to, I suppose, take a leadership role in the Methodist mission projects that I've been involved in. So I think the question you ask is, I would agree with what Alison's just said. I don't think you need any formal training at all to join in with the mission, and absolutely agree. Depends with what you're setting up. And I'm probably going to go the other, would encourage an eye for detail. If you're part of setting up a rural festival, I don't think you can be too prepared with the details, with the plan B, with the plan C, usually with weather, with building team, preparing for those conversations that we've already touched on. We've seen in some of the contexts I've been in, I mentioned the tattoo festival earlier, and there was sort of rural communities who weren't, this was a new experience to have these types of people and communities and cultures on their doorstep. So we found ourselves managing those conversations of kind of shock and newness and judgment. And actually, we found that in our team, there had to be a lot of mirrors held up to us, to our judgment. I say our, I'm not necessarily including myself, but, so I think that being prepared for the unexpected and almost walking and practicing what those conversations might be and how we might react, and seeking people who live those communities or who are part of the context that we are speaking inside of to understand how to work within them contextually, and how to speak appropriately, fairly, with non-judgment, and how to ask the right questions ourselves. But I think the key for me from the training would be, you have to be prepared. You have to be physically prepared for, the stamina that is needed for these festivals. If it's one day, that's one thing, but still they're long days. If you're there for many days, there's lack of sleep. You need to be prepared as a team, build the team well, employ rotas, take time out, safeguard yourself, obviously make sure the safeguarding is in place for others. That's absolutely key. But I think that conversation preparation is part of the safeguarding of you and the others too. And of course, all the other stuff, empathy, non-judgment, sort of perseverance that's needed when everything goes wrong. And I think, Alison, you touched on the working within the boundaries of the event and getting to know what your boundaries are, the team's boundaries, and other people's. So finding what's appropriate and contextual. The details, I would say, don't overlook the details when you're preparing for any kind of festival, or everything, the context is always shifting and changing, and and so are people. Your team members, your super reliable team member goes down with an illness or is exhausted from the day before. You need to know what your plan B is. I laugh because there's many.
Caroline.
Brilliant. Can I just add? Thank you. One of the things that struck me, having been in a parish for a few years, was that somebody might come up to me at another event, at another time, at another place, and I have never spoken to them, but they have seen me, and they have seen me talking to other people, or I talked to a friend of theirs or something. So even, I don't say even, all of our actions, all of the time we're on show, are sowing seeds for future actions and reactions and conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that advice. I'm just going to slip in a very quick yes or no answer here. Hearing what you've just said, do you think planning a debrief is important?
Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously, people can discuss that further, but it was just one thing that came to me when I heard you talk. Yeah, thank you very much. Quick question for all of you now. If you could offer 3 top tips on how to begin or to engage with a festival and to go there in mission, what would they be? What would they be? If you could offer 3 top tips. Andrew, can we jump on you first?
Yeah, my first one would be to smile and listen. I think we've talked already quite a bit about listening, but I'm amazed how many Christian folk find it really difficult to listen and to really give people their undivided attention. So I think that's quite an important thing. And if you were to do some training beforehand, I think that would be something, but being smiling and positive in listening. One is about creative ways to engage people. Somebody came up with a really good idea at the Yorkshire Show thing where they set up, it was making key rings with children, and basically there were beads hidden around the pavilion, but it really got their parents involved because they came in, they had to thread the beads onto little those plastic stringy things. They shouldn't really be plastic, should they? Strings. And but it kind of got them engaged. So anything that kind of gets people involved and that sort of thing. And my third thing is bubble blowing. We found that having someone blowing bubbles all day was just such a kind of brought people in. It made them smile. The bubbles blew all down the road. So it's a bit wacky, but those sort of things I think work really well.
Cool tip. Thank you. I must get some bubbles. Excellent. Katie, is it too soon to come back to you? Are you ready to answer for 3 top tips?
Yeah, and I think I'd offer these from if you're planning, if you want to plan something in a festival, so not if you're going in to something existing. So I'm taking it from the ground zero, if you like. So I'd say building what you said, Andrew, listen and learn the context. What is this festival? Who are the people going to be there? So do that listening and learning. Second top tip, then when building whatever you're going to do, whatever, Andrew, like you've just said, the creative ideas, be collaborative, be participative, and be representative. Don't operate from the outside in, engage in some way as part of your design team, delivery team, people, festival, or community, but, build it from the inside. So sensitive. And I would say the third tip is to build that reliable team, including reliable leaders. I think you have to have people at the helm holding the vision, but building that secure, reliable team.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Alison.
Okay, not surprisingly, there's some overlaps, but that's probably quite a good thing here, actually. I would say, talking about going past something you've got to know your community, know who's likely to be there. So the planning, and that's down to the detail. We try and make it really carefully thought out what our stand, and we are a modest gazebo, but what it will look like, how it would look to approach it and us. So we think quite a lot about how it looks. The preparation, we're all talking, we haven't mentioned yet food and drink and giveaways and information, but because we are engaging, as we've said, with different people, mainly for us, a lot of the farming community, because often it's their day out and it's their annual holiday for some of them. But for others, of course, they don't know as much, but it's having information that's relevant. Who are we? Why are we doing what we're doing? So making sure it's bang up to date and looks the part if you're handing things out. So it's all part of the preparation. And then we've talked about who's working with who. It really does matter which of the team are working together. What are the expectations? Who is doing drinks and who is doing the talk? It's very hard to do both when you've got a gathering around you. So it's the detail. I think Katie's mentioned that a couple of times. Spot on.
Thank you very much. Caroline, your words.
That's really lovely. When you're looking after a small rural area, it might be a good idea to engage with other people, with specialists. I work very closely with Derbyshire Rural Chaplaincy, and so that's really important. But being ecumenical as well, you know, it's not just your church doing it at this festival or in this villages. Look for partners to work with and to engage their skills. So that's, and then I would start with the communities, their festivals, but remembering that you're bringing something special and Christian. And I found that prayer was always a good thing to reach out for, either in a conversation very quietly at the end when you've been listening, can I pray for you? Or I talk about a bit more about prayer ribbons and setting those up, because people then can come forward, and the hot drink and the biscuits really important, but we're bringing something different, something unique and special.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you've got time, a little bit more about prayer rhythms.
Oh, okay. So you get some florist ribbon from your local florist. You ask them for the end of reel, so you can send away for it and pay for it. You set up a table with some stay below markers because they're waterproof. You put up a big washing line, and then so you invite people with notices or with invitations to write a prayer or a symbol or a name or a country on the ribbon. It's about 2 foot long, and you peg it up on the washing line, and it's very attractive. It's very pretty. So you've got maybe 4 or 5 different colours. People can see that from a long way away. We started this in my curacy church, and in the 3rd year, people were bringing a staple and photographs to pin onto the ribbons, because that prayer, that annual prayer, was so important to them. And it's something, it's so easy to offer.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Team, what a wealth of information there. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Carla, because I think, Carla, we've probably got enough information already for us to get into some conversation in our breakout rooms.
We have indeed. Thank you ever so much for all that you've shared so far. It's been amazing and fascinating and inspiring. So thank you ever so much. We're going to go into our breakout groups in a moment, but as James reminded us at the start of our session together, as we do that, we ask kindly that you listen and contribute with respect, that we ensure only one voice at a time so that we can hear each other, that we monitor our own airspace so that we give everybody opportunity to share who wants to speak, that we remember to disclose stories appropriately, and obviously to only share stories that are ours to share. So with that in mind, we're going to move into our first breakout room. And during your time together, I invite you to share in conversations around what have you noticed overarching themes in what the panelists have brought so far, and if so, what are they? And what have you found interesting, and what will you take away with you up to this point? So overarching themes, what have you found interesting, and what will you take away with you so far? We're going to go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes now.
We're just going to take a few moments to report back. So if there was a kind of a key bullet point or a kind of statement or headline from your breakout room conversation, please do put that into the chat, or if you're feeling brave and courageous, do put your Zoom hand up or your physical hand up if you've got a kind of a key bullet point or a learning point or a piece of insight from your breakout room, and we will share those. I'll get you to share those. So reading in the chat, if anyone puts their hands up, I'll come to you as well. So listening skills in any context, absolutely. The prayer ribbons, absolutely, thank you. Hospitality and planning seems to be key, absolutely, thank you. Anything from anyone else in the chat, or want to verbally kind of contribute? Go on, somebody be brave. Somebody say something. I'll come to you, Rob. I'm just going to read out knowing your context. Absolutely, Rob.
Hi there. I just shared an ours that there's a show society does a one-day show up in North Somerset, and we found that the most helpful way the church could act there was to take on the running of the mother and baby tent. So the tent had always been there, but hard to find, and just literally a table and a couple of chairs, whereas the local church took it on and made it more of a warm and hospitable place, and provided some refreshment and care for other toddlers and that, whilst mums were changing or feeding and that sort of thing, and to seek out what the need of the show society is, and then find if the local churches can help in some way is as important, I think, as having a church tent and, you know, making that presence like that.
Rob, thank you. That's really important. Yeah, finding those needs. I don't know your name, but you're down as Wadsley Church, and you put your hand up. So do feel free. Do feel free
I'm
to come.
Sarah.
Sarah.
I think one of the things that was lovely from us was somebody said that they had little jars filled with all sorts of nice things, sweets and raisins and things like that. And then you had a raffle ticket and you took one of the jars with you. And we said it kind of like changes the culture, because we've got a grade 1 listed building and it's all about putting on things to raise money for the church. But to change that to being something that is generous and giving, it just demonstrates grace, really, and that brings a whole new dynamic into it. And we said food is always good. Food goes down in any culture.
Fantastic. Yep. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. There's a question in the chat, and I'm wondering whether we save that for the Q&A near the end, because we just wanted a few bits of feedback. It was about working out who might be the right people involved in the team. So I'm going to say that out loud so our panel can get their thinking caps on when we come back to that at the end. And so you think we've all seen that. Providing prayer ministry models vary, and so there's some training there from New Wine, so that's good. Thank you for that. Any other very kind of bullet pointy feedback, Graham?
Yeah, to me, it's about being actually interested in what these people are doing. You know, the amount of knowledge and expertise and effort they put into the livestock. And so going along and listening, and it's fascinating to hear. But that then opens up the door for them to ask, well, why are you here? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyone with anything else? Anything at all? Val, have you got your thumbs up as a you would like to make a point? Excellent, go on.
I think the overarching theme for us is that wonderful sense of recognizing that it's so important to speak good secular. It's so important to be able to just be present and real for people, for whatever they come to be. You know, if they want to talk about something trivial or something painful. And I always used to call it a sort of kind of blessed loitering with an intent to bring God's love. And I love all the ideas about, I think in my group, it was Debbie said she loved the ideas about bubbles, and Rob with the sort of, what can we do? We can offer something to mother and children. But the thing, or father and children, but the thing is it's the best form of evangelism, isn't it? On the edge evangelism, where we get an opportunity just to speak to that community that's just the other side. And that is such a privilege. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Val. It's a lovely, profound moment to take us into a 5-minute comfort break.
So welcome back. It's been great to learn so much so far, but just opportunity to dig a little bit deeper with our panelists. So just as Catherine brings them onto screen now, I'm going to invite each to share just a couple of minutes each, a story or an experience of when you've been involved in a festival as a tool for rural mission. and a little bit of a focus perhaps also about, did you partner or work with anyone, and was there any learning from your experience? So a story of involvement. Did you partner or work with anyone beyond the local church, and was there any learning from your experience? So I think I'll go straight to Andrew for this one, please.
Okay, yeah, I think again there's a slide I think that Catherine's going to put on. Thank you. So yeah, so my involvement, as I've already said, is with the Great Yorkshire Show, and we're a group. The group is called the Yorkshire Churches on Show, and it's a committee that's been on the go for a long time. It's an ecumenical committee, so that's great to work across the denominations. We also work really closely with the organisers of the show, so we're kind of well respected and part of what goes on there, which is also really helpful. And we partner with local churches and local organisations. So again, there's lots of partnership work going on there. Each year there's tended to be a theme, and this year's theme was Journeying with Jesus Through Life. And so inside the pavilion, you can just see one or two of the pictures that we thought about baptism and about marriage. There's a display about marriage. They could dress up and have a go at that if they wanted. Didn't actually marry anybody. And we also have a prayer pool, which is a way of just remembering concerns that people have or folk that have died that they want to remember. That's quite a powerful place, actually, in the midst of a kind of busy show. So some of the kind of churchy things, but we also had representatives from the local food bank, and there was a display from the Mothers Union. There was something about Forest Church. And there was also a group from a local secondary school. St Aidan's is a Christian secondary school in Harrogate, near to the showground, and they were involved. And some of the youngsters from school came and helped to steward and that, which was really positive. So although it's quite a commitment to be there for 4 full days and the long days, actually with lots of other partners alongside, that does make things easier and really helps out. Other things that we had inside, we had some Lego for children. I've talked about the key ring that we had for people to do, but also outside we partnered with a local group. There's a fantastic group in Harrogate who recycle bikes. So they take bikes from people who don't want them, they kind of do them up and they pass them on again. It's a kind of environmental thing, but it's based in the basement of a church. It's a Christian organisation, and they came and partnered with us, and they were doing time trials outside. So that was it was quite an imaginative way of getting people involved and getting them into conversation. And also outside we had some big games like Connect 4, and you can see on the front there's a kind of bit with lots of ribbons on. They weren't prayer ribbons. We'd actually, because we were thinking about Journey Through Life, we as a way of getting into conversation, we asked people if they'd like to tie a ribbon that represented the decade of life they were in, which did mean them slightly revealing their age a bit. So we had from 0 to 100, and we had people tied in all the different bits of the so the ribbon that's alongside in front of the sign. That's it. Somebody's pointing to it. Again, it was just a way of engaging people. I think part of what this is all about is kind of begin a conversation. And once you've said to somebody, do you want to tie your ribbon, you can then say something of, you can follow on them with another question and let them do the talking. We may talk a bit later on about volunteers and getting volunteers. I think the right volunteers are really important, and volunteers who are able to listen and to engage with people is really important. One of my learnings was that not all clergy find that very easy, and I found some clergy hiding in the back rather than being out at the front. I don't find it very easy, but I push myself to do it because I think it's really important, just to be there and to be open and to be engaging with people. But that's kind of a really key part of what we do. So lots of partnerships was really important, lots of engaging conversations. There's another picture. I thought I would show you a picture of the our amazing bubble blower. She does things with style, does Pam. So she has a super duper bubble blower. But that was a wettish kind of day, but it was making people smile as they walked past. The other thing we were just asked to say was something we've learned. I think the thing that I learned, and I think somebody's already said this already, was to expect the unexpected. Because as you begin a conversation with somebody, you've no idea what's going to come out in that conversation. But being open to whatever it is that people feel they need to talk about, and to trust that God is in that process, and send up a few emergency prayers if you're not quite sure what to say. So be open to whatever the unexpected is, but great opportunity. Okay, that's it from me, I think.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Value all you've had to share there. Alison.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we're on a completely different scale actually to what Andrew is in many ways. I mean, some of the shows are not as big as that. Some are really tiny and just in one little field, and others are slightly larger, but they're principally agricultural. And those of you that will know that community well will know that for them, a day out is really so incredibly special. So what we find, and it will seem probably very small to many of you, but it's building on relationships, some of which we have already and others are new. And I say that because for some farmers, they certainly, even Christian farmers, rarely get to church because they're doing other things at that time when church services are on. So we see them at key times of perhaps their lives and they get to special services. But what we love is that on a show day, whatever sort of show, but for us it's agricultural, or we have ploughing matches is the other thing they call them, and they get out and they relax. They just have a few hours, and literally the dairy farmers do have a very few hours. They describe it as being on a piece of elastic. They finish morning milking, they have to get back for afternoon milking, but those few hours are precious. And so they're with extended family very often, and they've got time. And so for us, just to be able to see some of them in a relaxed environment is just a joy. And then, of course, we do, like all of you, meet new people, and that's also good. So I suppose for us, it's just the joy of building on existing relationships, making new ones, which is why the stand needs to look welcoming. You know, we need to make sure we have some information and literature if people want to know. And I think although we perhaps don't work quite as collaboratively as Andrew's sort of articulated, in a sense we do, because we work with all the other farming charities, and many of them have their own stands as well, and quite often we're all put together. So we would know a lot of people there at the shows, and that's good as well, because we can work together. And of course the other thing is we rely a lot on referrals. We would get a lot of very formal referrals from different organisations and agencies, but we would also pick things up from other farmers. And when you're more relaxed, you get a chance to talk more. So I think the learning for us each year, we do our own sort of debrief, fairly low key, but what worked and what didn't work. And yeah, I mean, we're only about 3 or 4 shows this year. We have a tent at the gazebo at 3 or 4, but we do what we call floating at the other ones. So we're there in a presence, but we're not in one static place. But I've picked up so much from all of the rest of you today. It's been great. But I think for us, it's relationships. That's what really counts for us. That's why we're there. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alison. Katie, how about you?
Yeah, I feel I'm not going to say too much new. What you've just summed up, Alison, building on what Andrew has said. And I think, Val, we came off the back of what you'd said about the privilege of these opportunities to build relationships. I think, yeah, everything I've been involved in has involved partnerships, and that's been that privilege of opportunity too. So it's not, the partnerships have been involved with, you know, organisations donating items that you've needed to set up with, or items of support for the volunteer teams, which has been crucial too. There's been some sponsorship with some of the festivals we've done, which helps raise a bit of money that, you know, that the church or the churches might not have been able to provide. So we've had partners for various reasons, but it's been the relationship building that's been key, and the partners have then got involved with certain aspects of the festival, or come down, or been in some way touch base with the church again through the year. And interestingly, I don't know what it is about festivals, but a lot of these partner links have come through members or through volunteers involved, or, you know, the people who are in the teams. So it's like those are the times when the friend, the husband, the wife, the neighbour has been turned to say, you know, can you help us out with this? And so works for this company, and they've provided all the water bottles, and they're providing, your gazebo's rubbish, we're going to provide a huge, you know, 50-person marquee that's got sides that come down. And so those things seem to have happened when the festivals have popped up. It's like people must get excited about it and join in. So yeah, we've partners, I think, are key. And of course, for that listening and learning, that contextual, participative community organising aspect as well. When you ask the question about learning, I think the good practice I've seen with all that I've been involved in, it's been that reflective practice all the way through. So it's been the stopping to debrief at particular times, building that into the programme. And like you were saying, Carollyn, the prayerful debrief in the Christian context, and I'm thinking about the secular festivals I've been involved in too. There's always been those touch bases for reflection. How might we do the next bit differently? And when something, that the good practice ingrained of whenever something happens that is unexpected, a change in weather, that it's not a knee-jerk reaction, but the practice is to regroup and to strategically rethink based on, you know, experience. So I think that prayerful reflective practice should be all the way through. We spoke earlier about a debrief, and absolutely key to have that planned in advance. But off the back of the debrief, I mean, I've been involved in, that's when the planning for the next festival starts, the year in advance, usually, because you're off the bat, you know, it's all fresh and your audience is there and ready. The contacts you've made with those partner organisations, you've donated stuff, or even the festival itself that you've built that relationship with, rather than waiting to be invited when they do their rounds, that might be 3 or 4 months later. It's to, you know, offer yourselves as soon as possible and to build the team as soon as possible.
Thank you, Katie. Really helpful. Carollyn.
Well, I'd like to talk about the Tissington well dressings. They're a very ancient tradition. It's been going for decades, and you can see pictures of the procession of priests and readers and community going around the wells, literally from 60, 70 years ago. But sometime during that time, there was a mission team came down from Scotland, and they spend 3 or 4 days there at Tissington, and they have a film, a little video of how wells are made, how the dressings are made, and the historical Christian background of it. And at the end of that little presentation, they give a bit about Jesus. And these are things that I, as the parish priest, would find it very difficult to do. I couldn't do that on my own. So it was wonderful to see them there, and they sold videos and little booklets and gave away booklets as well. But it was really important for me to get to know them because they were in my church. You know, this was the church that I served in and I was called to. And it took me, really, the first year I didn't do very well, but then the second and third years, I got very close to them and would pray with them at the beginning and end of the day. And it came to the time when the Methodist minister who covered Tissington and I thought it would be really good to have a short service at the end of the well dressing week to thank all the people who, mainly villagers, who worked so hard to put it together. The dressers of the wells, the hospitality, the car park, the stands. Christian Aid had a great stand there that sold cake all week. And to do that, we had to speak to this mission team. And because we'd had built up a relationship, it was possible to say to them, our service is going to be at this time. Will you suspend your rota of showing the video and that sort of things? And we were able to do that. So I think partnership and working together is so important. We bring different elements to the mission side of what we do at the festivals. Thank you.
Thank you, Carollyn. We're going to move into breakout rooms, and Lorraine's going to introduce those to us now.
As always, we are always chasing the clock on these meetings because there's so much to hear. We're going to go into breakout rooms for just 5 minutes. We've got a selection of questions that we are going to put up for you in the chat. There they are now. And choose one. You're not going to have time to plough through all of them. Which one speaks to you? And then put some answers back in the chat. That would be really helpful. So over to you, Catherine, so we can get into our breakout rooms, please.
You will have to do putting them into chat as you return.
Thank you. We certainly had a good chat in our group about, you know, feeling quite stimulated about the things that we could do. We're going to move. Are we all back? A few more?
Not yet.
If you wouldn't mind bobbing yourself onto mute as you return, that's really helpful, please.
I think we're all back. Lovely. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you all had time to have a chat that was helpful. We're going to move now into our question and answer session. So either pop something in the chat if you need to do that now. We'd be happy to try and answer them. And we've already got some already, haven't we, Caroline? Yeah, sorry, not Caroline. I was going to ask you. It wasn't you, was it? It was Carla I'm meant to be asking. Carla, I believe we've already got some, haven't we?
We have got a couple of questions already. If we go just in order as they arrived. I wonder if one or two of you might respond to the question about how do we discern who the right people are to be involved in your team? Perhaps particularly when you're working across a wide theological or ecumenical remit. Would a couple of you be willing to answer that, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to say a bit of something. We have quite a big team at the Church on Show. They tend to be people that people know, which isn't always the right thing, is it? But I think probably to get a bit of a sense, are these the right people and how can we involve them? And there is obviously a safeguarding there's some safeguarding process to go through, and that kind of working out if they're the sort of folk that will you know, be able to work with the ethos of what we're doing. There is quite a wide range of theological backgrounds of those that are involved in our group, which is a good thing in a way. That gives a breadth of thinking, and if it means we're not simply operating in one particular way. But yeah, that's kind of a bit of how we do it. It's probably who's willing to be there rather than selecting from a wider group of people.
Thank you, Andrew. Caroline, I think you were sharing something in our group around how a person might be brought into a team.
Yes, I thought it was interesting. I've been involved in vocations a lot in the Church of England. And I think sometimes when people step forward to help with something like this, it's an indication that they want to get more involved and they're feeling that draw, but they might not know exactly what it is they want to do. So I was remembering we had a huge motorcycle day up at Darley Moor outside Ashbourne, and quite a few people from one of the local churches at Norbury said they wanted to come along, and we were a bit worried at first, so we gave them the job of the hospitality, getting the teas and the coffees and the welcome and that side of things done, so that then they could listen to us, who had more experience of listening to others and talking and not, you know, forcing Bibles over people's heads. And then we could listen to them and see how they managed it. And so that was a sort of on-the-job training. It was very successful.
Thank you. The other question that came in, which we were really interested in, and we're talking in our group again, about how can we apply our learning to kind of day visitors to some of our rural areas. Many of us will experience lots of day visitors coming into a kind of our pretty villages. How can we apply some of our learning around festivals to kind of encourage that engagement with day visitors? Anybody willing to share on that?
You know, one thing I might just add is, and it's happened to me, is keeping information up to date. I mean, it's not easy, paper information, it's really quite hard, but we only twice a year we publish what we call our newsletter, which is very agricultural, not just for farmers, because lots of people find it interesting. So we put it into local churches, and they do seem to go quite quickly, and obviously we don't know who reads them, but that's good they do. But isn't it true how you can go into still some churches or local village institutes and find on a pin board something that's incredibly crumpled up and is sort of 10 years out of date? And I think when we've got visitors, which a lot of us have in our rural areas, it's simple thinking, but hard to do, to make sure our literature that perhaps we're responsible for and the extended churches is actually up to date, because there's just nothing worse than picking up something that's grubby and out of date. So that's just a very practical thing we try and keep on top of.
Thank you ever so much. Andrew, you're sharing something around Malham.
Okay, yeah, we have a tiny little chapel in Malham, which only has a very few members and is now what we call a class of another church, but they continue to be open. They're open all day during the day. They have an automatic lock on their doors. They have a pilgrimage booklet in there, so you could go in and follow the pilgrimage booklet. They have open afternoons with tea and cake, and they also have quite close links with the Samaritans, because sadly Malham Cove is a place where some people choose to go and take their lives. And so they've got a partnership with the Samaritans with notices outside, just because it's the place you would go past on your way to there, just as a way of trying to reach out to that particular, you know, group of people. So it's a tiny little chapel, but they still have a really good Christian presence in that community.
Katie, not to put you on the spot, but is there anything you'd like to add? Is there anything that any learning we can apply to from festivals into day visitors, into villages?
Can you frame the question for me? Sorry.
Yeah. So how can we apply our learning? Or what learning can we apply from our festivals into engaging with people who might just visit our area for a day?
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah, I think, I mean, I was writing up my comment to the previous question. I think it links to this. The one, the previous question, you know, about team and who to select for the team. And I was thinking in the background about, you know, it's part of our discipleship, isn't it, really, to be aware of our unconscious biases. Is part of our discipleship to be able to speak about our faith and tell our stories and talk about God. And a part of our presence at Christian festivals is knowing to tell the story of why we're there. And that's a question that's always going to, most of the time, going to be asked, like, why is this tent here? Or what are you doing? What are you doing this for? And I think telling our stories is core to that. So for our day visitors, we in the Learning Network, Carla, you'll know, we do a lot of mission, vision, planning, reviewing, sort of training and sessions. And a core part of that is, what's the story of your church? You know, take us through. How early can you start this story? It's engaging, and it links in with the community story. And so those day visitors, they're there as members of the community. So you're telling part of their story and they can join in with it. And if they're not part of that community, they're tourists. That's what they want to hear anyway, is, you know, what's the history of this place? What's the culture? What's the values? How does it link to my humanity? And how does it speak to me? So I've got a long way around saying telling our stories would be key, I think.
And I think that's a really important lesson. I think we have time for one more question if anybody has one. And
if not, we'll move on, shall we? Thank
we'll
you.
move on. And if not, yeah, we'll move on to our close. So thank you ever so much to the panelists for all you've shared, the thoughts that you've triggered and inspired, and the learning that we can take away with us today.
Thank you all very much. I just want to tell you quickly about our next session. It's on the 10th of July at 7:30, so it's an evening session. And we're looking at the subject of rural homelessness. We'll be looking at it from two angles, one from those who have no roof over their head, they have no home as such, but also from the angle of homelessness in rural contexts for those who cannot get a house where they want to live or accommodation where they want to live because of the changing use of the housing market now. So hopefully that will be another stimulating and interesting conversation with some panelists who bring some real knowledge to us. Thank you all very much for coming. We do appreciate it. If I could just ask for the panelists and the team to remain on after our prayer when everybody else will leave us. So I'll hand over to Andrew to close in prayer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, really good to see everybody today. Let's close in prayer. Loving God, our God of shows and celebrations, of music festivals and ploughing matches, of village fetes and county events. Thank you that you are a God who is present whenever people gather. Inspire and encourage us about how we can join in with what you are doing. How can we show your love and respond with care and compassion? Help us to be the rurally engaged people that you call us to be. We ask it in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you
Thanks,
next time.
everyone.